Hello everyone, welcome back to the SPAC Arena. Today we've got Desktop Metal, which had a really amazing day in the stock market today. They're going to be merging with TRNE, Trine, and this is going to be my review. I've been following this company for a few weeks. I've been doing some research on the industry, but I didn't open a position yet, so I'm trying to be as objective as possible as usual. But before we get into the review, just remember guys, I'm not a financial advisor and I'm not a mechanical engineer. So this is just for entertainment purposes. This is just my analysis of the stock and the company to see if I want to invest in it. So don't expect it to be financial advice or anything like that. So with that said, let's get into the review. The way I'm going to structure it is we'll talk about the company, what they've been doing, then the size of the market and where they are and where it's going, and lastly, how I'm going to be playing this stock. So let's get started, but as usual, please like and subscribe. It's going to be your good deed for the day and it really helps out. All right, guys, so let's get started by talking about Desktop Metal and exactly what they do and what's the management like and all of that good stuff. So first, Desktop Metal makes 3D printers for commercial uses. So not for making little parts for Star Wars or something at home or anything like that. They're more for commercial uses, research. Some of their big clients are automakers, and a lot of it is to make prototypes, but now the big changes when it comes to 3D printing is Desktop Metal is one of the companies that's the leader in bringing it from just small production batches for prototyping to full production line, like mass production. That's the next step, and that's where the big money is going to be. So with their technology and their 3D printers, they're able to create parts like these. But the difference is instead of creating just a couple, now they're starting to be able to produce them in larger quantities. Because this is one thing that's really important to understand about this industry, which remember, I'm not an expert, but from my understanding is making small batches of parts is very cost prohibitive because you have to have the tooling, you have to make the molds and all of that. So there's a lot of fixed costs. Well, 3D printing is helping that a lot because it makes each part cost less and you can make smaller batches. Now, what's interesting about Desktop Metal is that they're at the forefront of transforming that from being able to make small batches into large scale production. So instead of making a couple of these, they would be able to mass produce them like people are doing right now in factories. So these are some of the products that they have in the market right now or that are coming soon. Right now, this is their main product, the studio system, and this would go in a lab or a small office. And as you can see, it's mainly done for prototypes, low volume, and use parts. So this right now is their main product, and they have pretty good distribution, which we'll talk about in a little while when we talk about their partners and everything. But here's the rest of their pipeline. Now, honestly, I'm not sure exactly what this machine does. I wish I could tell you more, but this one is going to be in Q4 2020. Now, these ones make more sense to me, and these are the kind of upgrades to their previous machine. So the shop system is kind of the same thing as the studio system, except now you're having more volume produced by the machine. So serial mid-volume production of dense customer-ready metal parts. So this, they plan on starting to sell them in larger quantities in Q4 of 2020, so very soon. And this is their flagship product. What's coming in the pipeline is the production system. And this is where they want to really ramp up the production and make it almost as good as a factory that has all the tools and CNC machines and all that stuff. So with the production system, it's going to help them do high-speed mass production of metal parts designed for the factory floor. So the goal here is to mass produce those parts. And this is scheduled to ship in 2021. So this is where we are with their products. Right now, they're at the studio system. That's their main one. And they'll be expanding to the bigger ones that are more volume oriented. Now, what about the management team? Well, Rick Fulop is the chairman and CEO of Desktop Metal. I've been reading about this guy. I've looked at some interviews, and I've been pretty impressed. The guy seems like he knows his stuff. He's built a really good team around him, lots of engineers, right? So it's a team that's designed to actually get stuff done, and it's very engineer oriented, right? There's not a lot of fluff, and this is why one of the downside to this investor presentation, it's not my favorite. Often they show you a lot of models and they tell you a lot of fluff about the company and they kind of build a story. In this case, that's not the case with this investor presentation. It's very factual based. And this guy seems like that's his type. Like he's going to bring us to production and he's just focused on getting results. He's not the best salesman, right? He's just there to get the job done. And sometimes you need that. Now, Leo Injury doesn't seem to have a lot of experience in this manufacturing field, but the guy has a lot of connections, and I mean, he has a long track record with merger and acquisitions and public companies. So, nothing to complain about the team for Trine. Leo Injury is going to go onto their board, I believe. And yeah, I mean, the management team is good, the products are good. Now we have to talk about what's the scale of this industry. Is this a product that people need, and is there a lot of money in it? So manufacturing isn't really sexy or fun or exciting usually, but this is a graph that makes it more appealing to me and gets my juices flowing a little bit. Here you have cost per part and quantity of parts. And this shows you really what the problem is and how desktop metal is fixing it. So traditionally, casting and machining make it so the first unit created is really expensive. And as you make more units, then the cost per part comes down. But this, with their new technologies and their new printers, it makes it so as long as the company makes up to a couple 100,000 parts, it's cheaper to use desktop metals technology than it is to have the traditional methods, right, with all the machines and all that. So why wouldn't they use desktop metal? Especially since with their next generation of products, they'll bring that cost down even more. So now instead of a few hundred thousands, then it's going to be a couple millions, right, where it makes more sense to use their technology. So that's why they're starting to get pretty good distribution, and it's just going to keep getting bigger and better. So this is where we can see more information, right? If it was a traditional 3D printer company, there's been many of them. It would be very uninteresting. Like I wouldn't even make a video about it. Because you can see, like, there's been several companies before that made 3D printers and they haven't really done anything. So from 2000 to 2006, according to this, the growth rate was about 9% compounded annually. So then that's not really exciting. I mean, we've seen plenty of SPACs with much better, much higher growth rate than that. But then when it comes to 2006 to 2018, as the technology got better and companies started adopting this process a little bit more, then the growth rate went up to 20%. And now, starting in 2018, when they did that studio system, now they're reaching an inflection point where instead of just being used for prototyping in small batches, now we're getting into mass production. So this is the wave of the future. If you think about it, you want print on demand type products. If they need 10,000, boom, you load up the machine, you create 10,000 parts. If you need 100,000, you load up the machine, you make 100,000 parts. If a company needs two parts, or I'm thinking even in the future, let's say it's a dealership and they need one part. Well, what if they have the catalog of parts from one of the automakers and they just print it and then add it to your car, right? So this is the future, in my opinion. And this is why, according to them, from 2020 to 2030, then you're going to see a 25% compounded annual growth rate, bringing the market from 12 billion to 146 billion. So this is where the opportunity is. We're at the inflection point now where there's going to be mass adoption of the technology. This company is at the forefront, and that's why they're going to be making a lot more money, which we'll see in the next graphs. So a great question to ask is where is this revenue going to come from? Who are some of their customers? Well, from watching the CEO in interviews, automotive is only about 20% of their whole revenues. So there's not a big concentration, and that's very good for desktop metal because they're not vulnerable to one industry doing well or not, or one company. So they have Ford, BMW, GM, a bunch of other automotive companies, and also they have a variety of different industries that use it. They have have the University of Maine, they have Adidas. I'm not sure what they do with the machine, but it just goes to show that they serve all sorts of industries. And this is one of their customers, Eaton. And kind of like in 2019, they bought their first system and they must have liked it a lot and found a lot of use for it because then they bought a second system. Then a couple months later, they bought a third. Then a couple of months later, they bought a fourth system. So you get the point. Over time, as companies develop their process from using these systems, they find a lot of use for it, so they order more. Of course, that's very good for the company. And then here is for the shop system. It kind of shows us the metrics, how they're going to be making money with it. Well, they get a lot of revenue upfront, right? The upfront sale is $290,000 plus $33,000, which I assume is the materials to make the products. And then over time, they keep having recurring revenues. So over a 10-year period, each system for the shop system, that's the one that's coming up at the end of this year, they have about 1.1 million in revenue and 600,000 in gross profit. That is very, very healthy profits for one system. And then they show us their next generation, the production system, which is the mass volume one. In this case, it's a lot more expensive, 2.2 million upfront, 250,000 in materials. So over a 10-year lifespan, then they got 6.5 million in revenue and 3.8 million in gross profit. So again, that's very good, very healthy profit margin. That's what we like to see. That gives them a lot of space to grow because they'll have a lot of money to reinvest. So you can see these numbers here, same ones, where it keeps going up year after year, but here's where it's really important for us. That's what I talk about very often, is the margins are going to be improving every year. And that really is a driver for profitability for these companies. As they produce more and sell more, the fixed costs become a smaller proportion. So that's when the revenues become more profits. So here you have 19 million in 2021, the gross profit, and then it more than doubles every year for a couple of years up until 2025 when they think that they can make about 500 million in gross profit. All right, guys, enough with the slides. We just have to talk about the valuation, then we can move on to how are we going to play the stock. Well, they underwrote the company at $2.4 billion. That, of course, is at $10 with the SPAC price when it launches. So now if you want to calculate the current value, you would do 246 million shares times the current price of the stock, which is at $12.50. Now, remember, this doesn't include the warrants usually, and they have $625 million in their balance sheet. And this is what's really good about the company. One more thing is that they have a lot of money in the bank. Like they're flush with cash. They don't even really need the SPAC money right now to fund their growth. But when they have this money in play, they're planning on expanding. Right? They even made a slide for it, which they call a compelling merger and acquisition pipeline with a team ready to execute. Right? So they don't want to just do their little thing. They want to move up and sideways and expand quickly. So with that money, they'll be able to do so, and they have the experience to be able to accomplish those tasks. So you can expect that the company, all the numbers we've seen, that's just with their current path. But if they can actually buy other companies to complement their suite of products, then that revenue can be exponentially increased. So in the close, what do I think of Desktop Metal and how am I going to be playing it? Well, I kind of like the company. From everything I've seen, it's the type of very strong company. It's still a spec play, right? They have some products in the market, but right now they're still losing money. But they're getting 625 million in cash, which will help them sustain their growth and expand their growth. So even though it's not a company that's very hypey like some of the electric vehicle companies, I feel like this is going to be a very good long-term buy and hold. And you need some stability in your portfolio. You can't have everything totally spec plays, right? So in this case, I feel like it's going to have very nice long-term growth, especially if they can execute on their plan. They believe that their projections, right? They believe that they can reach up to 100% increase in their revenues every year for several years, which would bring very nice share price action for us. Now, we can see that it hasn't had a lot of hype around it, right? It peaked at 1260, but now let's back up a little bit. Right now, as you guys know, all of the SPACs are seeing tremendous amounts of money flowing through them, and this one's no exception, 841%. I've been talking about it for several days too now. Now the warrants though are a little bit too expensive for me. 368, they went up 27%. I feel like they're too expensive right now. As I mentioned, it's not the type of company that's going to double or triple. There's not going to be that hype around it. It's industrials, so they're not going to have a huge premium on them either. It's not a future tech type company. So for me, 368, I feel like that's a little too speculative. I'm more interested in the 12.50 for the regular share. Not only do you have the $10 floor price that covers you pre-merger, but it just gives you a very nice risk versus reward. And you guys know I really like that. That's one of the main components of how I invest. So at 12.50, I kind of like it. That's what I would be doing right now. It's going up, so maybe there's going to be a little dip, right? If there's a big down day in the market, maybe we can find it a little cheaper than that. But 12.50, it's still very cheap, so I'm not too worried about that. I would open a position now, and if it dips, I would just buy more. So that's probably how I'm going to be playing it. Feel like this is a good long-term buy and hold, and again, it's the type of stock that I might be able to sell covered calls, reduce my cost basis, and get some income from. So just to let you guys know, this is probably going to be one of my top 3 for the month. So if you've made it this far, you know ahead of time. But I hope you enjoy the review. I hope it helps you out, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.